Well, well, well. Hey, what's up, coach? What's going on, man?
Past, hey, you know me, man. Hey, we've been at this for a couple months, and now we finally here, the opening week of high school football in Illinois. We got to see who was real and who ain't, and let's get ready to have this intense dialogue.
It is an intense dialogue, man. I watched a bunch of football this weekend for the first time in a long time, and it's something different about this year. I feel like social media has taken over the climate of football in the United States. Well, specifically in Chicago, man. The hype machine is real. A lot of people coming into this first week one, have been on social media. Man, 5 stars on social media, and then I got to see him play this weekend, and it didn't add up, Coach. What do you got to say about that?
I was very disappointed, but if you recall, when I went to a couple practices and I
Yeah, you did.
explained to you that there was a lot of standing around in practices,
I
a
witnessed the
lot of
same
things,
thing.
a lot
I
of
called you.
a
I said
lot of
you
yeah, a
got
lot of standing around at practice, a lot of standing around with music playing, almost if it was team takeovers seem to be better organized.
a team takeover. A team takeover. That's what it looked like.
Yeah,
That's what it
the
looked like
team
on the
takeover.
field.
Yeah,
It
the
looked like a
team
team
takeovers.
takeover against Mount Carmel the other
No,
day.
and no, that would be an insult to the team takeover. These team takeovers are more organized than high school football coaches.
That's profound. That's profound. So you saying that the team that organizes the team takeover should probably be a coach for his school, for his high school.
Yes, yes. If you are a young person that believes you can organize a team takeover, you are qualified to manage a high school football program
In the city of Chicago.
in the city of Chicago. Yes, you are. If you have a team takeover proclivity, you can utilize that at a Chicago public school and coach football at any level.
Yeah. Yeah, because I saw a 5 star. I saw 5 stars on Brother Rice. That was the first game I saw.
Are you talking about Cameron McGee, the number one player in the class of 2028?
Yeah. And I was expecting to see just highlights across the board in Chicago public school, because it's probably the most stars I've ever seen since my tenure in the CPS. We had some guys to come out when I came out, but man, as far as 4 and 5 stars, this is probably the most I've seen in a long time. So I was expecting to see some skills.
It's not any five-star coaching. So let's just start with that.
That's the
Five-star
first thing.
talent with no star coaching undermines that. And so what you got to see was the social media and the five-star unprepared for football related activities on week one.
Well, how does that affect the individual player?
Well, for kids that don't get to play at programs that can sustain a social media hype, they will get overlooked for hype as opposed to substance. And I think that's, like we said, Cam McGee. I've had the opportunity to meet Cameron McGee. I think he's a solid young man. I think he's from Frankfurt or from the Mokina area. I think he played for the Junior Celtics, if I'm not mistaken. I think he's a very good young man. But football to be a five-star football player and to say that you're the number one player in the country, you have to be able to stop the dive. And
Yeah.
I have not seen Cameron McGee stop a dive play. I've not seen him stop a play at the point of attack against a real offensive tackle that you can rate at the collegiate level. So I think there's a lot to be desired in how we go about ranking student athletes that have not played and have not demonstrated the capacity to do very fundamental things at the collegiate level, even though they have, size, height, weight, and motion skills that you would think translate to being able to contribute at a Division I level. And I don't think that has married itself in terms of the assessment of Cam McGee.
Okay. Okay. 4 stars. Mount Carmel has a 4 star safety. Morgan Park has a 4 star safety. I believe they committed on the same day. One committed to Ole Miss, the other committed to Michigan. I didn't see
Yes,
I didn't see a Ole Miss player on the field against what team did they play? The purple and black team?
Downers Grove.
Downers Grove. And I didn't see a 4 star. I didn't see a Michigan recruit playing for Mount Carmel against
Did you see a
Lincoln
Florida
Ways.
recruit play? Did you see a Florida recruit playing for East St. Louis?
I definitely saw a Florida recruit playing for East St. Louis. He broke 17 tackles that game in one play.
You talking about the running back that's going to Auburn?
The running back that's going to Auburn. He
He looked like
he
a running back.
he looked like a running back that could play at Auburn.
But did the linebacker look like he could play at Notre Dame?
No, no. And so the hype machine. I don't know. Is it helping kids or is it hurting kids? Because I mean, they getting
I think
NIL deals.
you've never seen the apparatus of people that want to commentate on high school football that have media properties either. And I want to give a note to people that want to do, sideline game reporting. Please learn how to film the game. Okay? Learn how to film the game. Nobody wants to see half of an offensive line or half of a defensive line. It is your job to put a product on the field where you can see the game. It should not be, like you just went live on, Facebook or, have a quality product that you present if you want to, try to commentate or to produce, high school football that's quality, especially games
It's
that were
really
on that
not
level.
fair. It's really not fair because why is it that everything in Chicago is second rate or mediocrity? That's the norm. Why is that? Even with new things. Like I saw the streaming platform that you're speaking on, and it's like, man, why do we gotta settle for second rate? I live in Texas, man, and I can go watch all the Texas games on YouTube, perfect commentary, the 4K from the top of the field overlooking the field. Like why is it when it comes to Chicago, it's all smoke and mirrors?
Well,
Where
I
does
think
that
there
what does that
is.
derive from? What is that? I guess it's from the top down. Here comes your
Well,
politics. What
I think there are paradigms that one has to observe in terms of understand social constructs. And I know it sounds academic, but there is actually a framework in which you can look at this. And I think, I think I mentioned to you that we're going to have to do another POCU doc similar to the one that we did when we talked about, the hopelessness. And we talked about the early days of Forestville. Well, I think we're going to have to talk about sharecropping. And I
okay.
used to have a moniker of calling a lot of the public school coaches sharecroppers as an insult, as a derogatory way of expressing who they were. And I think as I've become a little bit more educated through my research, I think it does a disservice to call them sharecroppers because sharecroppers actually were people that worked
And
hard
did the
and were
work.
never
Yeah.
a and did the work, but were never able to get compensated fairly for their work. When you
Right.
look at the high school coach in Chicago, irrespective
It's
of
the
white,
exact opposite, huh?
it's the exact opposite. They
They're
get
getting compensated.
rewarded for mediocrity. So they are actually we have actually devolved from sharecroppers to just really low skill set individuals who have been put in
But
leadership
it
positions.
seems to be working because what if the goal is to send their kids to school to get them paid in this NIL era? Their marketing campaign seems to be working. The social
It
media
only works
hoopla,
so it only works for so long because when these kids go to these colleges, they
they're gonna
disappear.
have to come right
And
back
then
home.
and they have to come back home and they may get a little bit of money through NIL, but it ends up
But
being
that's
more
not
of
gonna
a
sustain them
liability.
for the rest of their life. I get it.
It's not going to sustain them for the rest of their lives. And in fact, it undermines them because they'll never get the opportunity to make as much money for the level of mediocrity that they've been able to be involved in for that ROI.
How do we change that? I don't understand.
I think, I
I'm
think, you
really
know,
perplexed.
I think you're going to have to continue to allow, I don't think,
My nephew is in the CPS, man. It's personal.
well, I think we're both CPS players, but I think now you're starting to see a second and third generation of low skill set people that
Coach, my nephew trained at a position this whole summer. And then he had a backup position that he also trained at. And he worked out at camp, at football camp. They have a game on Saturday, and he plays a position that he has never trained at.
never
Are they
trained at
trying
that
to hurt?
position.
Are they trying to hurt these kids?
I don't think that they intentionally would do it, but I think their management style certainly suggests that they're putting young men in not the best
L-
positions.
luckily, my nephew's been training, and the skill sets are interchangeable. Like he could do, and he held his own. But
Yeah,
come on, man.
at a position he never practiced at. He never practiced at that position that he played at on Saturday. And that just goes to show you the level of incompetence in terms of the people that are in leadership positions at any individual school. And as a parent, you have to kind of find out and give an honest assessment of if your child is participating in a sport like football. You have to do a very thorough and honest, diligent assessment of the skill sets of the people working with your child, because you may not want to have people that have such a low skill set trying to define something that takes a lot more than a low skill set.
Because typically the student athlete takes on the characteristics of his coach, you know? And
Yes, and in some cases, it can have lifelong implications from
man,
having
I've seen some
a
horror stories.
yeah, to having a low skill set coach make an impression on your adolescent child can do irreparable harm if you're not paying attention.
Unreversible harm. I've seen people lose their lives based on who they look up to.
No question. Peer pressure never ends in adolescence. Peer pressure can extend into adulthood if poor characteristics are normalized and from the adolescent phase to the adult phase, and there's no real analysis given to where the paradigms that they were taught to be student athletes are mistaught, and how those things can have long-term impact. And I think that's what we see now. We see it's essentially not coaching anymore, it's megalomania. And that's where the social media provides,
Oh yeah.
ample evidence that this is not about the development of team athletics or student athletes that are on a team. What we're
No, it's
really
about who can
looking
have
at,
the most attractive marketing campaign.
and really not and really poor marketing campaigns, because it's really
It's
just
not
based on
accurate.
megalomania. It's based on megalomania because if you begin to assess what is being marketed, there's something called truth in advertising, and you can't market products. You can't say that you selling beef if you selling duck meat.
So we need to be able to call the Better Business Bureau on these niggas.
Yeah, well,
Excuse my
we
friend.
we need to excuse your French, but that's that may be because the sharecropper is certainly superior to the Negro.
Very interesting.
Yeah, but
Very
let's
interesting.
get to some. Let's get. We want to give a shout out to Coach Assad at King High School for finding a way to beat a team that you were actually superior than, but you found a way to beat them. You
Oh
you
man,
found a way to take a
that's the
better
biggest
team.
win.
I don't know if
Biggest
it's a
win in King
bigger
High School
win
history
in King High School history, but I think
on
this
paper,
weekend, on paper, you got to give a shout out to Lane Tech. They were able to beat Shepherd at home.
right?
You had a big win from Home Wolf Law School. They gave a donut out to Bolingbrook, and Bolingbrook has two kids with Division I offers. Somehow they didn't get the opportunity to cross the end zone, irrespective of that.
A
Uh,
defensive end and a running back, that's key. Those are key players on both sides. How do you have a blowout if you have a running back with a 4 stars ranking, and then how do you score so many points with a defensive end with a 4 star ranking?
Well, what happens is what I think we did. I think what happens in the recruiting and even going to the Brother Rice situation, when you get those 4 stars or the kids that get those rankings and begin to get notoriety, sometimes that, and in most cases, if a coach does not handle the individual success of certain players the right way, it can undermine the integrity of your entire program. When you're trying as a coach or as a megalomaniac, when you're looking at an individual and trying to reward an individual that can only come through the collectives of a team, you
Right,
undermine your programs. And when it comes to when you're looking for cohesion and you have used individualism, cohesion and individualism could never work together. It's like oil and water. And many of the megalomaniacs who get the opportunity to administrate high school football or eighth grade or prep football, they really want to provide certainty to a young man's ego that will never be done again, and this where that long-term impact can be had at.
yeah, I've seen that be very detrimental just to all the CBS players that were highly ranked and didn't pan out.
It's
Yeah,
almost like looking
it's
at the Cam McGee kid. It's hard to look at a Cam McGee and I looked at him on film, and I can't say he's better than Martez Wilson.
right.
I can't say he's better than Martez Wilson. I can't say what was the kid's name from Hubbard that went to Oklahoma, Chris. It was something. They're like I don't think he's
Chris
better than
Patterson.
Quincy Patterson. I don't think he's
Quincy Black
better
went
than
to
Quincy
Kenwood.
Black that went to Kenwood, that went to New Mexico, that went to the NFL. I don't think
Right.
Cameron McGee is a point of attack football player. And you got to ask, how is a kid that's ranked number one in his class, how is it that he's so deficient in playing point of attack football? And when I mean point of attack football, can he defeat a tackle, a half tackle in terms of keeping plays inside? And can he get inside of a guard and stop a dive and wrong shoulder? He has not actually, and he did not play the last two possessions of the Lincoln Way East game when they lost. He
In a
wasn't on the
critical moment.
field. In the critical moments of the game, the last two possessions that Lincoln Way East had, he was not on the field. And what does that
That's
say to you? Who allows that to happen?
Yeah, that's tough to explain, coach. It's tough to explain how do you have a 4-star running back but a 2-star offensive line, or how you have a 4-star defensive end and a no-star nose tackle or a 3 technique next to him. What does it say about the development in the CPS to see the star gap, the gap between the players' rankings on there? Like, how do you have 2 players on offense and 1 on defense, but nobody else is up to par to where you can get blown out by a Homewood Flossmoor?
Well, I mean, it's very easy when you have a mindset of the people who are being allowed to make these rankings. I
Right.
mean,
These
you got
coaches.
your
Right.
24/7s, you got your edgy
Right.
Tims, and you really have to add, do they really know football to be able to assess what is going to translate to the next level? And a lot of time the steak don't have the same sizzle.
What do we how I keep asking this question. How do we get a more accurate assessment? I don't because it
I'm
ends up
almost to I'm
Chicago's on
almost to the
fire right now with stars, but it's just not on fire
because
right
of
now with
because
talent.
because because of the social media. You have a huge, Chicago is the third largest market in the country, right? So you're going to get a certain level of gravitas as a result of that, but that doesn't necessarily mean that that steak is sizzling. And what you're seeing is a desire to have Chicago be looked at like the football centers across the country, like a Texas, like the Floridas, like the Californias. But Chicago does not have that same translation because you really don't have a football heritage in urban Chicago that's at the collegiate level. So when you look at a California, you have a USC, you have a
Right.
Cal, you have programs that have done things on a national level where in terms of in the communities where these players are coming from. If you go to Arizona, you got Arizona State, you got Arizona, you got Northern. You don't have anything in Chicago, so there are a lot of people that are administrating football in Chicago that have never developed anything for the big stage. These are essentially D1 to, at some levels with the coaches that have, participated in D1 sports all the way down to the NAIA level. And what
Right.
happens is you bring a lot of these mentalities back into coaching, but no one has ever really demonstrated them that they've never seen football at that level where they can have a program developed for a national standard.
Yeah, I remember you spoke to me a couple weeks ago. You said that a coach that is only to coach DBs should not be able to be a head coach. A
You
coach
can.
that
I mean, a coach that coaches receivers, if they have never orientated themselves to offensive or defensive line play or linebackers or tight ends, you shouldn't. If I'm a high school administrator, and
yeah,
unfortunately, many of the high school administrators are deficient, and it becomes a
because they don't know
personality
anything about
contest. They
football.
don't
Yeah,
know
I
because
like
there's
this guy.
yes.
I think he's a good guy.
Yeah,
He
it becomes a personality standard and it doesn't become a standard where you can break down their career and say that they have a superior knowledge of each component of the game that they can develop young men. And so
It
for me, what
says
I
right
try to
here
explain,
he sent 5 guys to the NFL. Yeah, he's gonna be
and a
our
lot of
head coach
times, and a lot of times that, and a lot of times when you say you sent somebody to the NFL, that you may have worked in concert with many other people that were a part of that process. Nobody is individually sending guys to the NFL. And I've had the opportunity to see some guys go to that level, but I would never sit here and say exclusively that I was able to just do that all by myself, because if you
And
could, then you
put
wouldn't be
that on your
coaching. Yeah,
LinkedIn and on your rest.
why would you coach high school football if you have a process and get a guy to go to the NFL? Why would you do that for a $7,500 a year stipend if you're a Chicago public school coach? And if you can do it in the Catholic or in the suburb, maybe you're getting 15 to 25. But if you can get a guy from the prep level to the pro level, I'm pretty sure you can get more than $25,000 a year if that's what you really can do.
Most certainly, because the guys are getting at starting rate 60,000 out of high school, 2 stars.
Exactly. So it's a disservice, and it's almost like people do. It's so much incompatibility. What I've recognized this weekend is coaches doing things that don't make sense, that are incompatible. Right? If you have a big offensive line, right? Why
Yeah,
would you have a big offensive line in tight splits?
that doesn't make much sense.
To them it makes sense because they don't know that you just eliminated your ability to run inside because you can't create the lanes because you haven't created the space.
Yeah, that showed me everything I need to see watching a big offensive line with no splits. But you watch Lincoln Way East and no, not Lincoln Way East, East St.
East
Louis.
St. Louis and
And
Louis, yes, and I think I think I'm appreciative that East St. Louis, and I felt like they would come in and rebound after they didn't have the performance they wanted in the state championship against
against
Fenwick. I
Fenwick,
knew that they would come in and play more serious against
Fenwick
Mount
had a
Carmel.
defensive end last year that actually backed those stars up, man. He was an
Yeah, the
impact
kid,
player.
he was a kid that's at Michigan, but it all depends on who coaches a kid like that every day. If you don't have, if when you find kids that make it, that have the size and the ability for that size to be developed to be taken to the next level, you have to find out who the position coach is, because the position coach is going to tell you everything, and more importantly, who else is he going to be able to develop? And if it's not the position coach, how is it that you got one kid to ascend when you may
Right.
have a group of 6 or 7? And that's one of the bigger questions I had this weekend as well. When I looked at a young man, I'm not going to mention his name because I don't want him, to deal with issues. But they
Right.
have a defensive line where there are guys that are comparable to this young man, and yet none of those defensive linemen have offers that are comparable to the young man we're talking about, and
But
yet
they're but
they're on the
they're
same team.
but they're trying to take credit for the young man's offers and development. And it's like, man, if you developed him,
How do you have where
then
Yes. Why is there a drop off if you have 3 or 4, or if you look on their sideline, you have young men with those same body types that are on the sideline, and yet you have a young man, who is nationally ranked and has committed to a Power 5 school. There's a huge distortion when you say that, I had one blue chipper, when you have the same body types and characteristics of young men that don't are not in position to get those same opportunities. Some questions need to be asked, because there are a lot of people out here that are doing what I'm doing from a training perspective and guiding people through the process, and you got to ask, well, which process is the most efficient? And I'm coming to believe that the high school football coach is really the high school megalomaniac. There are very few high school coaches. There
right.
are more megalomaniacs in high school sports than there are coaches, because if you can get one kid to get an offer, I don't care about the one kid getting an offer. I want every young man that participates to that has the
The
ability to get
ability
those
to
same
get an opportunity.
yes, yes,
And
yes.
it's just
And
that's
so
just hasn't been the case. Not at
it's
Morgan
not
Park,
in it's not
not
any
at
and
the
it's not any
Simeon,
uniformity.
not at
And if you ask that question, how do
not
you
at a
have
Kenwood. How do you have
how
a
do you
Marquise Lightfoot and then nobody else goes? It's like,
Right, because if you're a position coach, you should be able to continue to produce that body type to get that opportunity. It shouldn't be a one-off. It should be uniformity to that. And I think when you begin to pose questions like this, that this is when you reveal the low skill set
right,
capacity
right,
of the megalomaniacs who coach, because they don't understand. If you're going to take credit for one player, you can't dismiss the other
you can't you
45 or
can't you
50
can't
on
not
your
take credit
roster.
for the people you didn't develop. And so,
Yes, yes,
man,
yes.
I picture an accountability board, man. The Illinois
Well, I want
IHSA
to.
needs to develop an accountability board so that these people can be held accountable with this new NIL era. Man, I feel like they're hurting these
I
kids,
don't.
and it should be a class action lawsuit against name all the coaches,
Well, I
and they should
mean,
be getting a continue, coach.
I think. I mean, I think that has some different connotations, but I think the marketplace will reward those who ask the deeper questions, and I put that on the parents because simply if the parents did their job.
Where would you send your kid in 2026,
Depending on what, depending
2027?
on what position, depending on what
Mount
position they
Carmel is the
play,
top team in the state.
I wouldn't send my child to a Mount Carmel. I don't have to say I don't have to. What happens is Mount Carmel. This is the crazy part about a Mount Carmel or even a Brother Rice. They have 100 kids standing on the sideline who won't get coached.
Right,
That
right,
won't get coached.
right.
And you have parents that will accept that because they think the alternative is worse. So in my world, I don't care about though. I want those 25 kids that won't touch the field at the big programs. Those are the kids that I would like to. I mean, remember the
And
coach I told you I went and met with that morning, and I told
yes,
you he would never have me, and I told you that coach got blanked out this week. He didn't score. And I thought I had, and he never called me back, and then he had, and he doesn't have a roster where he shouldn't have not scored. I mean, you've had the kids out there doing 6 a.m.s, and in your first game,
it's
you
like, for
you
what? Why are you wasting these
right.
kids' time?
You right. You've had kids and you had kids doing team activities since January and you didn't score any points. You can't put that on the kids. You can't put
Understood.
that on the kids. So I mean, I think we closing in on this episode here, with the first week of high school football wrapped in Chicago. And like I said, we want to again, give Coach Assad at King High School and that staff a shout out for winning the game that they were the better team in. You can't walk in to a game where your offensive line is 3 to 4 inches taller and 50 pounds heavier than the defensive line and consider yourself an underdog. I mean, and
Right.
we'll see what they do this week against Marist, who beat Simeon quite handedly. And Simeon has, great uniforms, a
Man,
lot of finesse.
everybody got some sweet uniforms,
Everybody
sweet
got great looking
helmets,
uniforms in the
sweet
social media
Instagram.
plan. Yeah, everybody got it. I
That
mean,
shit don't look
yeah,
good when you get whooped, man.
when you get beat. I mean, because you get beat because you don't want to listen, and it's like you lose because of what you practice every day. And that's where the accountability should be. If you're on the coaching staff and you lost this past weekend by plus 14 points, don't look at those kids. Don't put it on them
You
because
gotta
you
look in
had the
that mirror.
control in January. You got to look in the mirror, megalomaniac,
Got to.
because they're, like
You
I said,
got
they
to.
aren't, they're megalomaniacs. And so what we'll do is we'll get back on here. And I think you guys look forward to this Pocky doc we're going to do about the sharecroppers because I think when we just go to that base and understanding that we're dealing with a whole class of men, that are in a profession where they are rewarded for being mediocre.
You can't do that anywhere. Only in Chicago can you do that, but it's just not.
Yeah, yeah. Well, the sharecroppers came to Chicago and they end up getting more reward for less work. And so when you
Yeah.
reward multiple generations of sharecroppers, then that the integrity of
Cause
sharecropping,
the successful sharecroppers stayed in Mississippi, huh?
yeah, and the failed sharecroppers came north and
Came to
became
Chicago.
gangbangers
So,
and public
man,
school teachers.
I got a better way. I got a better way. I'm gonna go up north
Yeah,
and finesse. Man, we gonna finesse.
yeah.
We
Well,
gonna finesse everything.
I look
That's
forward to the
what it
Pocky
is.
doc about that because I mean, when you look at it as a sociological construct, we're
It's
dealing with
still
it with a yeah
in 2026, we're still dealing with
sub sharecroppers. We're not dealing.
the
The
sub
sharecroppers were
sharecroppers.
superior to the sub
Yeah.
sharecroppers that we deal with in the city of Chicago as it relates to administrative youth activities. The gangbangers are more skilled at leadership than the high school megalomaniacs that administrate sports.
Hey man, God bless them, man. Hey, coach. Thanks for tapping in this
Hey,
Sunday.
we gonna hey let's look at week 2 and we'll come back in. We're gonna drop that Pocky doc on the sharecroppers, and then we're gonna come back by the end of this preseason and we'll have a better idea of whose they
Of
really are.
why things work the way they do.
Yeah, because there's no need to just speculate. I don't want to be one of those people that
Opinion
when you
based. I
hear
get
me
it.
opinion, I don't have an opinion. There
This is
are
all based on
factors,
facts.
there are
Yes.
factors and social constructs that frame my arguments. These are not personal opinions. So when you talk to me about sharecropping and I tell you that there is an institution lower than sharecropping in terms of characters, and that is the administration of high school sports, and it's been this way put it to you like this: the street gangs in Chicago have all been more successful than the most successful high school public school coach in terms of access to developing young men or whatever they do with young men. The street gangs have had more efficiency than the
Oh
public
man.
administrators of youth activity.
Oh man. That's profound.
So,
We'll leave
hey,
you with
we
that,
done,
man.
man. Leave you at that.
All right, man. Till next time, man, on the Deprogram.
Yes, sir.